So we're going to talk tonight about how to give your seller multiple offers, and there's quite a few benefits with that. And I truly hope, as far as helping you, anybody on this call, if you have a question or something you're not sure about or some application you want to ask about, definitely ask, jump in there. The more interactive it is, I know the more impactful it will be for you. Um, and so it's a good opportunity for you to kind of process information and interact with it and ask questions. So feel free to jump in at any time. You can raise your hand. You can just give a shout out. You can wave at me, whatever you need to do to get your question out. All right. So we're not going to share slides tonight. It's just going to be discussion focused. And so the issue that comes up, especially right now, is if so many people are wholesaling, and especially virtual wholesaling. So the Dayton market and really the Ohio markets in general are very low priced and get hammered by a lot of wholesalers from out of state, out of town. And so sellers, if they meet any kind of criteria for a list you can purchase, they're being given lowball cash offers, right? They're very familiar with that. But the issue is that for a lot of sellers, that really doesn't fit what they need. That's not the solution to their problem necessarily, is the lowball cash offer. So in my experience, I started buying houses and I was buying all cash, raising money from private lenders. And it was pretty much doing the BRRRR strategy where I buy it cheap, all cash, and then fix it up, rent it, and then refinance it with another private lender. Well, to do that, I had to buy cheap, all cash, right? It had to be a low purchase price to be able to put money into it and get all my money back when I refinanced. But I realized I was missing a lot of deals because that didn't fit what the seller needed. And maybe they had a lot of equity, but they really didn't have the urgency. And so there was no reason for them to give up that much equity in the property. There's really a lot of reasons why a seller would want to sell directly to us as investors, but doesn't really need that quick all cash offer. And so when we give them multiple offers, not only does that better serve them, the seller, but it helps us convert more deals, right? We'll get more properties under contract because we can appeal to more sellers and more situations. So not all deals work with lowball cash offers. If you're trying to buy a house that doesn't have very much equity, obviously it really doesn't work to make a lowball cash offer. That seller doesn't want to bring money to the closing to sell the house. And additionally, not all people fit a lowball cash offer, right? And if you've heard me talk before, I've talked about how some sellers, they don't even want a lump sum of money at closing, that it's more beneficial to them to get a little bit of money each month to live off of, right? So every seller we talk to is going to be in a different situation and have different needs, and we can help them by structuring deals more creatively than that cookie cutter low cash offer. And a big one reason for this is we all get tight on cash, right? There were plenty of times early on where I had just run out of all the money I'd raised and was tired of trying to constantly raise money. And I wanted to get some deals where it didn't cost me very much money out of pocket. And so if we get seller finance deals, usually we don't have to spend that much money or spend that much cash out of our pocket to get control of that property. So, all right. So I'm going to talk. Are there any, questions on that, kind of the motivations of sellers or why to give multiple offers? I'm going to talk more about kind of the how, but I didn't know if anybody had any questions or thoughts or ideas on the why.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you got started with Burr,
Mm-hmm.
and to do that, you were buying low, like in fixing up properties, buying low ball. And then if I got my notes down right with what you said you realized that you were missing out on deals, correct? That some sellers needs couldn't be met with low ball cash offers necessarily, that they were looking for other things other than just all cash. So then how did you get into more, uh, two-part question. How did you get into the more structurally creative deal methods? And, like, where did you learn it from? And are you doing that now in lieu of Burr?
Okay. Perfect.
I'm done. Sorry.
So for me, I'm a big reader. So I listen to podcasts, read a lot of books, and I'm a divergent thinker. So I like new ideas. I like creative ways to solve problems, and I enjoy that. So I always had a problem where I didn't have very much money, right? But I wanted to buy real estate. And so I was trying to always figure out new ways to solve that problem so that I could buy properties without having money. And so the creative financing piece, really the early creative financing deals were really simple, right? One was a landlord who was selling. I knew he was used to getting rent and getting payments, but he was tired of the maintenance. And we agreed on a price. And I just said, would it be okay if I paid you over time instead of paying you all at once? I had already asked if he had a place for the money, if he really had a plan for it, and he didn't. He was just tired of the maintenance. So I mean, there was no fancy strategy to it or anything. It was just me trying to come up with a solution between me and him, right? And another one of those early deals, they had no equity. They had maybe $2,000 in equity on a $85,000 house, and so I offered to give them a little bit of money and then take over their mortgage, right? I wasn't really sure what that document was or how that would work. I just knew that conceptually I could give them a little bit of money at closing and take that property and start making their mortgage payment. And so they agreed to that. And then we figured out what documents to use. And that's really how it started.
Was that a subject too?
Yeah, that was a subject too. So, and really for both of those sellers had received all cash offers that they refused. So the landlord, he refused to take a lowball cash offer because he knew what the value was and they were still rented and he was still getting rent. So really, he had the pain point of management, but not a lot of urgency. And the other one, they would have to bring money to the closing table, and they really didn't want to do that, which nobody does. So that's the concept. And really, once you start giving people multiple offers, it will help your offers. So if you just give an all cash offer, real low all cash offer, they're struggling, that seller's struggling with, do I take that low cash offer or go look for somebody else, right? But when you give them a seller financed offer or an all cash offer, then they're kind of debating between those two offers. And so depending on what situation you're in, you can lower the all cash offer and kind of point towards the seller financing offer as a good deal. Or if you really don't want the seller financing, you have some cash sitting there you need to place, then you can present that offer so it kind of swings them towards the all cash, right? But it will help justify, just like in a magazine, if you look at a catalog or something or online, they're going to have the grill for $150 and then they're going to have the grill for $400, right? And they may not sell that many $400 grills, But because there's a $400 grill, they sell a whole lot more $150 grills because the people aren't thinking, is it worth $150 or not? They're thinking, do I want to spend 150 or 400, right? So it's the same concept. Okay, so how I do it, kind of the nuts and bolts, how to do it is from my first conversation with sellers, I always tell them that I'm going to give them multiple offers, right? That we're going to buy properties two ways: low price, all cash, or higher price with seller financing. Or I don't say seller financing, I'll say where I pay the seller over time. Okay. So that you don't want to use the real estate lingo. So, and you don't want to do like a bait and switch where you say, yeah, I'm a all cash buyer, but then you show up and you only present seller financing, right? You want to be, or at least I always want to be, transparent. So these are the two ways I buy properties. And if one of those two fit, then we can keep talking. If one of these two don't fit, then let's stop wasting our time, right? If they need all cash, full retail price, then they should list it with a realtor. They shouldn't be talking with me, right? So I'm upfront from the beginning. And then once I have met with them, figured out their motivation, looked at the property, then I'm going to give them these multiple offers in writing. Okay. And so you can give 2 or 3, it's kind of your preference. But generally I'll give 2. One is low cash, low price, all cash. And the other one is some type of seller financing. And the seller financing, well, the form it will take will vary depending on what their current financing is, right? But when you're talking to the seller, it should be real simple. Can I give you so much when we close and then so much per month? Or can I give you this much when we close and then I make your mortgage payment until it's paid off? Or, the phrasing is really for them. How's it going to impact their life? How much money do they get when they sign the documents? And are they getting money monthly or getting the mortgage taken away? What's the other benefit to them?
Chad, do you try to use, if you're going to use seller financing, like a 20-year amortization with a balloon to help you cut the loan down but give you positive cash flow immediately?
So I always go 30-year amortization, no balloon.
Okay.
And then if, a lot of times they say, I don't know if I'll live 30 years or whatever that, counter is. And then you can add a balloon, right? But I like to start without a balloon. And then if we add a balloon, we start without a balloon so that payment's low, just like you said. And then if we add a balloon, that's me giving a concession, right? So in that kind of give and take, if I give something, then they'll feel more inclined to give something to me.
Is your long-term objective to get out of the seller financing? Because obviously there's going to be an elevated interest payment versus going to a lending institution.
For me, in the beginning, I didn't care. I just wanted control, right? I just want to collect these properties. And I still, for the most part, feel that way. Let's say the subject to, like that first subject to deal, the mortgage was 4%. I think there's right now there's probably about 21 years left on that mortgage. So I'm fine with 4% for 21 more years, right? We'll leave that. Otherwise, I usually pitch 5%. I don't, if it's 5-6%, I really don't worry about it.
As long as it's positive cash flow, right?
Oh yeah. Always positive cash flow.
Yeah. Rule number 1.
That's right. Yeah. So those are the 2 offers. And then if they're the kind of seller that price is their number one thing, You know, if you talk to enough sellers, you'll get that seller where all they care about is price. They want, Zillow says it's worth 150,000. Their house is run down, but they still have to have 150,000, right? So then I'll make in that instance, I would make a 0% interest seller financed offer if they don't have a mortgage, so that I can give them that high price. I'll pay them more than their property is worth, but there's no financing costs with that. The payment would just be so much per month till it's paid off. So
Now, I just want to make a comment here, Chad.
yeah,
For the realtors and the newbies on the line here, a multiple offer situation in normal real estate dealings is different. I just got through a property. We made an offer, 10,000 over asking price. Guess what? We didn't get it. 19 offers and 5 of them are cash offers. A property in Huber Heights. So that's what multiple offer means in real estate agent life.
How did
Now,
you
what
lose it, Sean?
he's talking about is multiple offers from the same buyer to the same seller, but they got 3 options, 2 or 3, 4 options. So the seller can choose whichever option they want. So that's the difference between multiple offers from the same person to the seller, or a bunch of buyers through the realtors making an offer to the seller.
Can you share on that particular job, how you lost it? What was the deciding factor?
They said they took the best net offer. And we didn't even ask for anything, no closing costs, no home warranty, nothing at the start. It was a plain Jane offer. We still lost it 10,000 over asking price. Asking 185, we offered 195, still didn't get it.
so yeah, I think that's more the norm right now.
Yeah,
So,
that's yeah.
I was a lender on a flip deal, and it's just getting ready to close this week, but it was listed 160. The winning offer was 180 with an escalation clause. So if they didn't win, they were allowed to bump up the price even beyond 180. So it's a crazy market.
Still not.
Looks like we got a question from, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to butcher your name. Is it Kamran?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
My question is that, how do you find the sellers who have not listed their property on any with any realtor or any website? So how do you find that seller?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So everything I'm going to talk about, and this is probably a good way to handle it, Sham, is I'll talk about how I deal with it directly to the seller, and then you can add some comments on how it changes if it's listed or if you're working through a realtor. Because it's still possible, but it is different. So how to get in contact with a seller. There are a lot of ways to get in contact directly with a seller. And I have done most all of them. So you can do really inexpensive ways like putting out bandit signs or signs in yards. Anytime we have a house that we buy, we put a sign in the front yard. House that comes up for rent, sign goes in the front yard. That's cheap marketing. You can do magnets or window stickers on your car. That's really cheap and effective. You can do driving for dollars, which I think is a really effective way right now, because that ensures that you are local essentially, and a virtual wholesaler is not in competition with you. And so driving for dollars is, you drive through the neighborhood and you see a house that's vacant, whether that's in the summer, the grass is tall, or you see a whole bunch of mail in the mailbox, or You know, there could be a whole bunch of indicators that means that house is distressed, either vacant or needs some massive repair. Maybe there's a tarp on the roof. Some reason that you think that seller may want to sell their house. And then you can, with the county records, you can look up, you can leave a note or a door hanger on the house. You can look up where that owner lives if they don't live at the property, and you can send them a letter or a postcard, or you can skip trace them and get their phone number and give them a call or text, really. And that's on a small scale, right? You drive through a neighborhood, you find 5 houses that you want to target, and you reach out to those 5 owners. On a larger scale, you can buy lists. So for a list, let's say you can go to different websites, let's say List Source, and you can type in certain criteria, right? You want, I'll just throw out some random criteria. You want Englewood, Ohio, so zip code 45322. You want an absentee owner, so the owner lives outside of or has a different mailing address. And maybe you want to say you want the absentee owner to be outside of Ohio, so that they, you know, they live far away and they don't want to travel to deal with the property. You can put that in there. You can put that they have to have 50% equity in the property, whatever criteria you want, and then you pay money for that list of people, and it will give you the names and mailing addresses. And you can send them a letter, you can send them a postcard to get in contact with them, or you can give that to a skip trace company and get phone numbers, and then you can text and call. So that's a whole bunch of different ways. I'm sure there are other ways, right? Some really easy ways are to post on social media that you're buying houses, you're looking to buy a rental. I've gotten deals that way. I've gotten deals from just telling my family and friends, right? When I see them, hey, I'm looking to buy a house. If you know anybody who needs to sell fast, really, I mean, I'm a big believer in just putting it out there. And I'm not going to pick any one funnel. I'm just going to tell everybody. And I send out letters. I like direct mail. I still do signs, and it'll come from that. Or you can talk to wholesalers. Usually the wholesaler will stay in the middle, and you won't be directly dealing with the seller in that instance.
Yeah, they conceal a lot of information between the seller. I just did a wholesale deal representing the buyer, and they did not tell me the whole story. Then we found out they sold it as a 3-unit, and we come to find out from City of Trotwood, they were planning on doing it. They submitted the drawings, but they never followed up. Essentially, my buyer had to spend about 6 months to get it back on track. I know.
I've had some really good experiences with wholesalers and some terrible ones. So
I know.
Mixed bag. But yeah,
Hey,
there's a
Chad.
whole bunch of ways. Oh, go ahead,
Hey,
Sean.
While you're on it, one of the ways I found it to be pretty effective is just get out of the car and talk to the neighbors on the side and the front and the back, and someone will have enough information on where the seller is now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think really a lot of the most effective ways aren't super fancy, right? You don't need software or a call center or, an assistant in the Philippines. You just need to tell a whole bunch of people what you're looking for and go
Exactly.
talk to people. So Justin asked, what's the best software for pulling the data? I tend to use ListSource. But there's a lot of CRMs that you can buy the list from as well. There's no one best way. It's just your preference.
Yeah.
So great question. I probably rambled on too long with that one, but yeah, you want to get in touch with the seller directly. And And then when you're figuring out your numbers, a lot of people kind of wonder, well, how do you know what to offer? And for the low cash offer, generally I'll use the simple 70% rule, or in this market, more 75% rule. And that's real simply the ARV times 70% or 75% minus the repairs. And so that'll give you that low all cash offer so that you can make the purchase, do the repairs, and still refinance it and get your money back out, or sell it as a flip and make your profit, right?
And how did you come up with the 70 or 75?
70 is kind of like the standard historically. And that's just so that you don't necessarily have to figure holding costs and the specifics for those. You just know that in ballpark 70%, that 30% remaining, you're going to make a profit. So
Okay.
with the hot
I'm saying
market,
there
it's going, it's 75. Some people are going to 80. I think that's way too far. I struggle even with going to 75. So,
Right.
Yeah, I can tell you that in the private lending industry, we are in the 60 to 65%.
right.
70% is our ceiling. And the more I talk to people in, let's just say this area, tri-state area, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, even I was talking to some realtors in Miami last week, Miami Beach, Florida. And I can tell you, when you get above 70%, it really has to coagulate a great deal. There has to be a lot of amenities or whatever. So when it gets to 75, it's what we're finding is not really the norm.
Well, it really depends on the price point. At least if you're looking at a rental, it depends on the price point. A lower price point house, let's say in Dayton, well, you can pay 75% of ARV all in, and you're going to cash flow on those rents, right? Because the rents are so high compared to prices.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, a different set of lens that I'm looking through versus yours. So you are right. That's correct.
Yeah.
I just want to share a couple of things. There is no hard and fast rule about 70%. Depending on the market, in a soft market, you can go back to 65%. On a hard market like we are now, we may not have a choice but to go to 75%. Bottom line is, you got to figure out, would it, number one, make cash flow if you can rent it after the repairs? Or would you make enough profit to make you worthwhile to invest in that property?
You're dead on, Sean.
That's it.
Yeah, you want the positive cash flow. And so in a hot market, you're sacrificing a little LTV, but as long as you're getting the positive cash flow and you got a long-term lens, you're in great shape.
That percentage doesn't work in the high and the low end markets. It's the medium markets, it will work. And the low end markets, it will, probably work. With the high end market, you're not going to work. But again, investors, we don't usually think about high end markets. We usually go up to 150 to 200,000. That's about it for investors. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And I completely agree. The 70% is a ballpark, right?
Yeah.
That's where you're getting that starting figure. And so let's say even in my situation, if it's a house where I think you can make money with it, but I'm not sure I really want to deal with it, then I may offer like 60%, right? Because that'll make me be excited to buy it. But if it's in a neighborhood I really want to get into, or it's, the type of property that eventually I'll sell off a bunch and pay off a few, and it's one of those, then maybe I'll go to 75, right? Because it's worth it to me. So that 70% is just a ballpark to start with.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one is kind of the formula for the low cash offer. And some people really focus on that 70% figure, make sure they get their money back out. Some people focus on cash flow per door. It really is your focus. So, and then the seller finance side, that's where it's even more creative, right? So a lot of people say, well, how much is typical to put down, or how much do you offer as the down payment? And with the seller financing or creative financing, it is literally open-ended, right? It is what you and the seller agree to. And that's even way too vague. So I would say it is what will benefit the seller and will benefit you, right? You're trying to come up with a solution where they get what they want and you get what you want. So it's not a compromise where we both give up some things. It's that win-win where we both get what we want. So there's no set rule, but you want to give some money down a lot of times so that seller knows you have skin in the game, right? That phrase that you're not going to walk away from the deal. You're going to want to be able to have the monthly payment low enough that you have good cash flow and have money in reserves for repairs if you're holding it. But additionally, that payment has to be big enough to cover any financing that they have. So you don't want them in a negative cash flow situation either. And if you get into a situation where maybe it's just really hard to figure out how much to put down and have the monthly payment work, right? Maybe let's say some weird examples here. Let's say you need to pay them $80,000 for the house. That's kind of the price you agree to. But cash flow wise, you can only amortize $60,000, right? So you're going to make them monthly payments on $60,000, but the purchase price is $80,000. But you don't want to give them $20,000 at closing, right? We don't want to spend the $20,000 out of our pocket. So we can do a delayed down payment. Maybe we give them $5,000 at closing, and in 2 years we'll give them another $5,000, and they'll get a monthly payment on the $60,000. And maybe you give them $10,000 at year 4, right? So you can get real creative with when they receive money. And if I'm in a situation where I have a house that I really want and they'll defer some of that down payment for a few years, I'm pretty confident I can figure out how to come up with that down payment in a few years, right? Are you guys confident? I'm sure you can come up with it. Yeah. Once you're committed, you got the house under contract and you're controlling it. So usually that seller's just focused on the price. And then we have the freedom to structure it so that we get our cash flow and we don't have to pull too much out of pocket. Any questions from you guys or comments on that? Any questions on how to set it up or structure it or make that type of offer?
In the example you just gave, Chad, where you had 20,000 down, and I don't know if I wrote this down exactly the way you said it. You called it a delayed down payment, 5K at close, 5K maybe in 2 years, and the additional 10,000 in 4 years. Okay, in that example, then when you're talking about money down at closing, that doesn't include closing costs that you're going to agree to pay. So, correct? I mean, that could be like, yeah, maybe let me make this a lot more simple. Let's say we were agreeing to pay all $20,000 down at closing. In addition to that 20K, we'd have to come up with whatever we agree to as part of the closing costs. And as the buyer, we certainly will have those, right?
Well, okay. You brought up a good point. There are closing costs still to be considered, but I would never assume that you have to pay the closing costs. So
That's if it's seller financing, right?
No, even with seller financing, you can split the closing costs. You can have the seller pay a certain portion of the closing costs, or maybe if you give them really what they want, you can have them pay closing costs, right?
Mhm.
If you're trying to lower that price and they won't wiggle on the price, then yeah, I would be always say, well, I'll be willing to give you that price if you pay the closing costs. Yeah, definitely. So all of that is negotiable, right?
Is
All of
that's not necessarily true though with, this is a little off topic, but if we go to traditional bank financed mortgaging, where you're taking on the mortgage and you're buying the property, not necessarily amortizing the loan back to the seller, but you're actually taking the loan, seller's walking away free and clear, they're taken care of. In a traditional closing, you're gonna be expected to come up with closing costs in traditional closing, correct? Am I correct in saying that?
I
Can that
don't
be
know
negotiated
that
as
that's
well? Even the
necessarily,
closing? Okay,
yeah, I don't think that's necessarily true. Um,
you can tell I haven't done a lot of deals.
I'm trying to think of an instance
I haven't
where
been to that
that
many
would
closings, man.
occur, but no, um, the closing costs are negotiable. If there's an existing mortgage that you're going to start making payments on, the
Right.
escrow account related to that mortgage is negotiable.
Mhm.
And you bring up a really good point. If it's a rental that's occupied, you're going to receive the deposit at closing, right? You want to get a copy of the lease and find out how much deposit was paid, and you're going to get prorated rent. Whether that tenant has paid that rent on the first and you close on the third, right? The landlord is still generally responsible for it, so you'll get that prorated credit at closing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's another good way to get your money out of pocket low, is if you're buying an occupied property to close just after the first, so that you get not only the deposits credited to you at closing, but you get prorated rent for the majority of the month. So
It worked really well on multifamilies.
yeah, it's worked really well for me on a double. So if it was a 10 unit, I mean, that would be really well.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, so any other questions on that? I know it's kind of vague and all over the place. Jenny? Yeah.
Jenny, question. Unmute yourself, Jenny. Unmute.
There we go. I couldn't find it. Couldn't find the button. Do you have like some different ways that you've priced it up, like that you could give us for like a template? Like when you're saying, here's your offer, like here's an offer for this is an all cash offer. This is what it looks like if you're doing a seller financing offer. Do you have any kind of templates like that?
There's not really a template. So what I'm giving you is as close to a template as I have, right? So your all cash offer, a template would be 70% of ARV minus repairs is your maximum offer. That's the template for that.
Oh no,
all cash offer.
no,
And then the creative finance offer, the template is going to be, what does the seller need? Do they need a certain amount down because they want to move? Do they have expenses they have to pay? How much money do they need at closing? How much money do they need per month? And then I'm going to try and satisfy that and get what I want. That's the template. I wish it were
you
more.
might have misunderstood the question a little. I meant so that like the way that you write the offer, like the wording that you use to make it legal and like so that you don't get screwed. Pardon me.
Okay, so super simple. So everything I do is really simple because I want the seller not to feel like I'm trying to take advantage or, and so I will just write out, it's like a letter. It's called the success letter, right? So, hey, it was great to meet with you. I enjoyed hearing about your wife and kids, or enjoyed hearing about your time in the home. I have 2 ways I can purchase your property. One, and you're going to lay out how much cash, how soon you close, or I can also purchase it as this much down, this much per month, this many days to close. You can put a % interest in there if you want. I usually don't unless they say something. And then it says like, let me know within 24 hours which offer works best for you. Look forward to helping you move on to your next home. Right? That's it. That's a letter, offer letter.
Uh-huh. So do
Okay.
you mail it? Do you go hand deliver it? Do you email it? Do you like,
Usually I'll email it because I want it fairly quick, especially in the hotter market, right? I'll tell them when I meet them, kind of the ballpark. Then if I need to figure out the numbers, I'll come back to the office, email it to them, and then call them to talk through it. If it's a situation where I know they're not going to decide very quickly, then I'll just email it to them, give them a longer time frame. And if you want to get really fancy, some of them I'll send a video that explains the benefits of seller financing and why that really is good for them, and to try and help them along on accepting that seller financed offer.